Frank Bennett's mouth went dry as over 100,000 hostile alien eyes glared down at him, while a hulking Vorkarian High Chancellor spat out humanity's death sentence if anyone learned Earth's most precious resource. The lone human envoy stood at the center of the Grand Forum, a colossal amphitheater on the reptilian Vorkarian homeworld of Vorsia Prime. At 5'10", the 35-year-old felt utterly dwarfed by the ocean of scaly green bodies, razor talons, and elongated snouts filling the stadium. Frank fumbled with his translation earpiece, pulse racing, as 8-foot-tall Horus strode up to the central podium. The Vorkarian leader launched into a bombastic speech touting his people's dominance across 327 star systems. He crowed about their terraforming technology and ability to synthesize oceans on barren worlds using a rare compound called aquavit. Without this precious elixir, Frank knew the reptilian species couldn't expand their empire or even survive. Humanity had only just achieved interstellar travel. Earth was the new kid on the galactic block, poor, backwards, and vulnerable. As the High Chancellor droned on, a sense of dread knotted in Frank's gut. These aliens would butcher mankind in a heartbeat to seize their planet's resources. All it would take is a single misplaced word about the vast quantities of pure dihydrogen monoxide, what humans called water, sloshing across 70% of Earth's surface. As Horus finished his speech with a hiss and slam of his clawed fist, a deafening silence fell over the amphitheater, punctuated only by the whir of ventilation systems. Frank's heart hammered against his ribs. He had to find a way to establish common ground with these aliens for the survival of his people. He rose on shaky legs, his chair scraping loudly in the cavernous space. Supreme Chancellor Horus, esteemed delegates of the Vorkarian Empire, he began, voice wavering slightly before growing steady. I am Frank Bennett, representative of the Terran Federation. On behalf of humanity, I wish to extend our congratulations on your many achievements, your mastery of terraforming, your synthesis of aquavit, and your dominion across the stars. Horus tilted his head, reptilian eyes boring into Frank with an unblinking intensity. A new species at our forum. Tell us, Terran, what resources and technology does your kind possess? Frank's mind raced as he attempted to frame his response carefully. Our planet is rich in minerals, arable land, and biodiversity. But our most abundant resource is water. It covers over 70% of Earth's surface. The silence turned electric. 100,000 Vorkarian eyes widened in shock. Horus gripped the podium, leaning forward until his snout nearly touched Frank's face. What did you say? The Chancellor demanded in a sibilant whisper. Frank repeated, confused. Earth has vast oceans of liquid water. The assembly erupted into a cacophony of hisses, howls, and guttural clicks, a wall of alien sound buffeting Frank. Horus pounded the podium, the thunderous impacts gradually quelling the uproar. Aeolai, Horus snarled, spittle flying from his fanged maw. Liquid water is the most precious substance in the galaxy. No world could possibly contain such quantities. Realization crashed over Frank like a freezing wave. He had revealed too much. These reptiles viewed water as a commodity to be hoarded, not the key to life itself. He scrambled to salvage the situation. Supreme Chancellor, please understand. Our water is essential for human existence. We can't simply trade it away. It belongs to our people, to our planet. Horus slammed his fist again, nostrils flaring. It belongs to the Vorkarian Empire now, he roared. Your species will surrender its water reserves to us or suffer the consequences. Frank stood firm even as his stomach turned to ice. We will not, he said quietly but clearly. Earth's water is not for you to take. The Supreme Chancellor's eyes flashed with rage. He thrust out a clawed finger, shouting, Seize the humans! Suddenly Frank found himself surrounded by a phalanx of guards, their spear tips gleaming under the harsh lights. He heard the cries of his colleagues as they too were apprehended. Horus loomed over them all, cold purpose etched in every scale. If the Terrans will not submit, then we will take their precious water by force. Let the conquest of Earth begin. As the guards hauled Frank away, a terrible weight settled in his chest. He had unwittingly painted a target on his homeworld. A technologically superior alien race now saw humanity as nothing more than an obstacle to the most valuable resource in the cosmos. The battle for Earth had begun, and Frank didn't know if mankind could win. The Vulcarian guards shoved Frank roughly down the corridors, their scaly hands clamped around his shoulders. His colleagues were being dragged behind him, just as helpless against the brute strength of their reptilian captors. They were marched toward a holding cell deep within the bowels of the amphitheater. Suddenly, a cloaked figure darted out from an alcove. It moved with a speed and fluidity that the Vulcarians couldn't match. In a blink, the diminutive form was among them. Frank heard a high-pitched whine, then the guards started dropping their spears, hissing in confusion, as their weapons and communicators sputtered and died. The humans needed no prompting. Frank drove his elbow back into his captor's stomach. The Vulcarian doubled over with a grunt. More scuffles broke out as the delegation fought to break free. Within moments, the guards lay unconscious at their feet. Frank turned to the cloaked figure, who pushed back his hood to reveal pale blue skin and large silver eyes set in a hairless, angular head. "I am Zax of the Zephyrians," he said in lightly accented Terran standard. "We must go quickly before more guards come." He shepherded the humans down a series of dimly lit, winding passages that Frank never would have found on his own. Eventually, they emerged into a small hangar bay where a sleek, matte black spacecraft awaited. Once aboard, as Zax brought the engines online with a muted hum, Frank demanded, "Why are you helping us? What's going on?" Zax inputted coordinates into the nav system, his long fingers dancing over the holographic display. "My people have been watching the Vulcarians for some time now. We believe Horus plans to weaponize your planet's water, to create a device capable of destroying worlds." Frank's blood ran cold. The implications were staggering. Zax continued, "But there is hope. A faction within the Vulcarian military, led by Commander Talon, opposes Horus. They've been amassing evidence of his crimes, building a case to depose him, and now they want to ally with us and with humanity." Frank leaned forward, the beginnings of a desperate plan taking shape. "Then we need to get to Earth, warn my people, shore up our defenses, maybe even strike first if we can." Zax nodded solemnly. "Agreed, but we must hurry. The Vulcarians will already be mustering their fleet." The Zephyrian tapped a final sequence, and the ship shimmered, vanishing from visual and sensor detection as its cloaking field engaged. The craft lifted off, gliding out of the hangar and accelerating hard for open space. As the vast expanse of stars filled the view screen, Frank felt the weight of two worlds settling upon his shoulders. The battle for Earth, for the fate of the galaxy itself, had begun, and he would be at the forefront, for better or worse. The blue-green orb of Earth loomed larger through Zax's viewscreen. As they neared, Frank's heart sank. Dozens of sleek Vulcarian warships hung in orbit, dagger-like against the void. Leading them was the vast Conquistador, bristling with weaponry. Frank cursed under his breath. Horus didn't waste any time. Zax's long fingers flew across a holographic display. "And there's more. I'm detecting an enormous energy signature from the flagship, like nothing I've seen before." Hair-cold realization gripped Frank. "He's done it! That bastard has a working prototype of his water weapon." Zax turned to Frank, silver eyes hard. "Our fleet can't win this, not outright, but maybe a small team could—" "Infiltrate the Conquistador," Frank finished grimly. "Destroy the weapon before Horus can use it on Earth." Zax nodded. "Precisely. I'll alert Commander Talon. His loyalists can attack from within, sow chaos to cover our approach." Frank set his jaw. This was Earth's only chance. Let's do it. As they neared the Conquistador, a harsh voice crackled over comms. "Unknown vessel. Transmit identification immediately, or be destroyed." Zax's hands blurred over his console. Tense seconds ticked by before the voice returned. "Code verified. Cleared to dock, Bay 7. They glided into the cavernous hangar, eerily still amidst the bustling Vulcarian ships. As the airlock hissed open, Frank gripped Zax's arm. "I'll head for the computer core, upload the virus. You find that weapon and send it straight to hell." "Good hunting," Zax replied, his form shimmering and vanishing as his cloaking field engaged. Frank slipped into the labyrinthine corridors, ducking patrols of Vorkarian soldiers. Alarms started blaring, accompanied by the distant rattle of gunfire. Talon had begun his attack. Rounding a corner, Frank walked straight into a squad of guards. Both sides froze for a heartbeat before diving for cover. Plasma bolts sizzled through the air. Frank snapped off shots, downing 2 before a bolt clipped his shoulder. Pain lanced down his arm. Suddenly the Vorkarians jerked and fell, holes smoking in their backs. Talon stepped from the shadows, flanked by a dozen grim-faced soldiers. "Bennett," Talon clicked. "The bridge is ours, but Horus has locked down the core. We'll hold them off. Get that virus uploaded." Fighting through the pain, Frank sprinted for the towering blast doors of the computer core. His fingers flew across the control panel. The doors groaned open. Zax ghosted through the conquistador's twisting halls, scanner in hand. The energy trace from the weapon pulsed ahead, close now. He emerged onto a sprawling observation deck, stars glittering beyond the viewport, and found himself staring down the barrel of Horus's sidearm. "I knew you'd come," the Vorkarian leader hissed. He stood beside a thrumming cylinder pipe snaking into the ship's bulkhead. "Behold the future. With this, our empire shall—" Zax moved, a blur even to Horus's reptilian eyes. A plasma bolt scorched the deck where he'd stood. Horus snarled, tracking the shimmering distortion of Zax's cloak. They clashed in a whirlwind of strikes and counterstrikes, Zax's speed matched by Horus's raw power. A blow connected, and Zax tumbled, cloak flickering. Horus loomed over him, aim steady on Zax's head. "Now," Horus crowed, "watch your world burn." The deck shuddered. Horus stumbled. Zax leapt. The two grappled for the gun, rolling, twisting. Zax's finger found the trigger. The plasma bolt took Horus in the chest. He crumpled. Zax staggered to the weapon, scanner already dissecting its inner workings, searching for a weakness. He had to hurry. Earth's fate hung by a thread. Zax's scanner flashed red, warning of an imminent overload in the Vorkarian superweapon. Plasma scoring the observation deck, he dove for the cylinder, fingers flying. He had to shut it down, had to— Pain exploded in his side as a bolt grazed him. His armor smoked. Zax staggered, vision blurring, but kept working. Then the cylinder cracked. Coolant sprayed, scalding. Alarms blared. Zax slumped against the bulkhead, fumbling for his communicator. "Frank," he coughed. "Weapons damaged. Meltdown imminent. Horus—" A clawed hand seized Zax's throat, wrenching him up. Horus snarled in his face, eyes wild. "You've doomed us all!" The Vorkarian flung Zax aside, rushing to the failing weapon. But it was too late. Power levels redlined, containment fields buckling. Horus whirled to a control panel, stabbing commands. "Activate self-destruct, all personnel, evacuate!" With a final glare at Zax, he sprinted for a hatch, his personal escape shuttle. "Zax!" Frank's voice crackled over comms. "What's happening?" "Horus set ship to blow," Zax gasped. "Get out now." Zax dragged himself up, every movement agony. He had to reach his ship, warn the Zephyrian fleet. But as he stumbled through the disintegrating corridors, cold reality gripped him. He'd never make it, not like this. In the bowels of the Conquistador, Frank raced through strobing emergency lights, the ship shuddering around him. He skidded into the escape pod bay to find Talon and his remaining loyalists waiting, and a scene of utter chaos. Alarms wailed, soldiers shoved and shouted. Far too many for the handful of pods. "Talon!" Frank called over the din. "The ship!" "I know," the Vorkarian clicked grimly. "Horus has doomed us to save himself." "What do we do?" Frank asked, eyeing the heaving crowd. Talon's gaze hardened with resolve. He raised his plasma rifle and fired into the air. "Enough!" The bay fell silent. "Let the human and my soldiers board, now!" Stunned, the crowd parted. Talon's loyalists piled into the pods, Frank squeezing in last. He turned to Talon, eyes widening in realization. "What about you?" Talon shook his head. No room, this is the only way. He slammed a fist on the launch controls, the pods sealed with a hiss. Talon, no, Frank shouted, but it was too late. The pods blasted free of the Conquistador, the massive ship receding. Suddenly a blinding flash seared Frank's vision. A roiling shockwave slammed the pod, sending it tumbling end over end. Frank gripped his harness, stomach churning, as debris pummeled the hull. When the tumbling finally ceased, Frank peered through the viewport at a sight of utter devastation. The Conquistador was gone, a dissipating ball of plasma and shrapnel in its place. The Vorkarian fleet drifted, ships sparking, and dead in space. And among the wreckage, the shattered remnants of a small Zephyrian shuttle, Zax. Grief and rage warred in Frank as the pod hurtled towards Earth's blue embrace. The war was over. They had won. But the cost? Miles below, frantic reports flooded into military command centers and government buildings across the globe. Panicked eyes turned skyward as the Vorkarian wreckage rained down in fiery streaks. In the United Nations Security Council chamber, stunned silence reigned. The events unfolding above strained credulity. Alien empires, doomsday weapons. It seemed the stuff of science fiction, yet the fragments of those terrible realities now littered their orbit. Suddenly the chamber doors burst open. A disheveled figure in a tattered envirosuit stumbled in, flanked by armed guards. "Frank Bennett, United States Aerospace Force," the man croaked. "I was there. I saw it all. You have to listen." As Frank poured out his incredible tale to the shocked world leaders, the gears of global policy began to spin as never before. The illusion of humanity's solitude in the cosmos had shattered, and Earth found itself woefully unprepared for the dangers lurking between the stars. News of Horus's assassination at the hands of his own people rippled through the assembled councils and congresses. A new Vorkarian government, seeking peace. But could such an offer be trusted? Could the wounds of this terrible conflict ever truly heal? Humanity now walked a knife's edge, Frank knew. The same stars that had once inspired wonder now loomed as theatre for fresh threats. Only by standing together, girded by new knowledge and new resolve, could Earth hope to survive. As the battered defender of mankind looked to the future, he couldn't help but ponder the friends and allies he had lost. Zax, Talon, heroes all. The road ahead would be long, it would be hard, but for their sake, for the sake of all, it must be walked. The battle for Earth was over. The battle for the soul of the galaxy had just begun. You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.